Our Life Now and Forever. You can find part 1 as a VOD up on Twitch and also on my YouTube channel, which is also Great Enright. And yeah, we're gonna jump right back into where we left off. This is definitely gonna be a multi-part series because oh, hello. It's my cat. Because it's a long series. But yeah, sorry, I just gotta check one thing. Okay, we're good. We're good to go. All right. We were right in the center of a windy mountain path. It flowed over the uneven ground, blanketing every small bump and bend like a black river. Along the street, huge wooden poles rose into the sky in a row that rivaled the trees. Stretching phone lines and reaching branches wove the whole town together. Even though Golden Grove was a lived-in place with man-made things, the vast wilderness was much as a neighbor to the residents as their real-life people neighbors. Tamarack trampled over the grass, swooshing her arms at full-length swings in front of her. She didn't get anywhere near the tarmac. Chio's stride was a lot breezier. He took the spot in line closest to the road and didn't even check for cars. His eyes were aimed at the now viewable sky. You ended up somewhere in between them. If Tamarack was a swoosh and Chio was a breeze, you were a whirlwind. You rushed around, twisting the angle of your head and taking in every new thing that surrounded you. All that air went out the window when Chio started moving his hands around even more than Tamarack. He frantically stuck his fingers in and out of each of his pockets while poking his tongue out at the corner of his mouth. You and Tamarack just watched as he tugged at his jacket and pants while walking. The two of you probably shared the exact same thought. He was looking for his notebook, or paper, or something. Aha! And it was paper. But it wasn't his special 10 pages. The thing Chio grabbed was a thick, folded packet of white printer paper that was covered all over in tiny ink words. You could instantly tell what it was. There were many papers stapled together with many little words on them that only came from one place: school. Chio held it close to his face. He had his nose completely in what was basically a book, but for some reason, he started talking to you and Tamarack. Which room did you get? For a second, Chio peeked over the pages to look at both of you. Who's your teacher? Tamarack thought hard, but she didn't find the answer in her head. She squished her hand under the flap of her bag without unbuckling it. She had to find her own papers. I remember my mom told me. The room is number 24. I think that her teacher's name was Murray. Chio used his thumbs to bend the papers down. They stopped hiding his face, and you could see he was smiling. Wait, that's my room too. Tamarack waved her packet in the air with a crinkly flurry. Me 3! We're all in the same class, you cheered. Your mom had given you the papers. Chio probably got his from his mom and dad, and Tamarack from Omi and Oppa. Despite being kind of different, the papers were all the same. A smirk settled in his regular spot on Chio's face, all according to plan, as if he somehow could have planned it. We're roommates. He didn't need the packet for anything else, so he stuffed it in his pant pocket with a shrug of one shoulder. There's only 3 5th-grade classes we could have been in. Also, that's a lot. Is it only me? I only had 2. Or I guess I had 3. But we had one was French. Because I am Canadian and they do that here. So yeah, I guess that tracks. But there was only 2 that kids who weren't in the French immersion program could be in. That's pretty big. But I was in like a city. Small town. I guess it's for each neighborhood though. So it would be one neighborhood. So I guess that tracks. When Chio made sure it was deep enough to not just fall out, he brought both of his arms into an even bigger shrug and chuckled too. But Mrs. Murray, I almost made it without her being my teacher. It was close. Tamarack peered into his face with wide eyes, leaning over so much you almost walked into her. She didn't have to say what her question was with words. Chio got it. Don't worry, she's nice. She's the best teacher for you two. Chio made a very serious and reassuring okay sign with his fingers, but in an instant it was snapped into a pointing gesture. And you're probably gonna be shocked, but Mrs. Murray isn't just a teacher; she's a mom, and she has kids that aren't just her kid, that are. Wow, I can't speak. I'm so sorry. She has kids that are just her kids, not students. Wow. Why would that be weird? How does the teacher have kids, Cassie? You'll never had the pregnant teacher? Your teacher had to leave because she was pregnant? That happened all the damn time. Same way all adults do. But now I know where we're really going. I can bring us right to the door. The extra burst of confidence got Chio to take a few long strides ahead of you and Tamara, keeping his chin high. Tamara bounced across the grass, kinking her knees high up to catch them. She didn't let him keep the lead he took. You happily went up to them. You ran forward to get back in the middle of the row. You were greeted with grins from both of them. Your steps came back to the steady rhythm between the three of you. Let's do Chio, why don't you want Mrs. Murray for your teacher? 'Cause she knows me. Not like how all the other teachers met me because I go to that school. His dark brown eyes stretched open wide as they could. His whispered words were pulled out just as long. It was a deep, secret confession. She really knows me, outside of school and everything. The seriousness of it only lasted a second. Autumn laughed at that instead. It's gonna be tough to get away with stuff now. Instead, Tamara put on the shock expression Chio had just put away. Whoa, I've never seen a teacher outside of school. When do they leave? They stay up and live as bats, like that Doctor Who episode. Pretty late usually, but they do go home and do errands and stuff. I've experienced it. Oh, that was interesting. You learned something new. The longer the walk went on, the more Tamara's gaze was pulled up to the forest edge along the road instead of what was right in front of her. Her steps drifted unevenly. You couldn't blame her. You had done the same during the trip a couple times. But you weren't the only one who noticed her focus. Oh. Hey, so it's kind of funny how both of you like the woods that much. It's the only nice place I've seen here so far. She said it is the plainest way possible, and the words still make Chio gasp hard enough to cough. Have you been places other than the forest? Yeah, lots. They're not good. I can't believe it. I think that... Hey, both places can be good. They're just different. Yeah. Chio shook off the shock Tamarac's statement hit him with. He turned his cheek to the front as he rolled his shoulder. He was winding up for a comeback. I guess I can give you one thing. There is a pretty special kind of fun that, in all my years of living here, you can only ever have in these very woods. Nowhere else. Really? What is that? He'd cast a reel and Tamarac was hooked on it. She instantly became invested on what mystery Chio had on his line. I'm not going to tell you. What? Tamarac shrieked in a tone so high it scared away a bird who was minding its own business in a tree above. It was hook, line, and sinker. The beat of its wings fluttering through the air matched Chio's giggling. He brought a hand to his chin and leveled a mischievous glance at Tamarac. One day, you'll understand. Probably. That was really it. He closed his lip, folded his arms, and settled into not explaining for the rest of the walk. Tamarac couldn't accept that or couldn't get the hint. She pestered him with a passion of words, getting stronger every time she repeated them. Tell me the thing. Tell me the special thing. Tell me the special thing. He's so adorable. Aww. A mysterious place deep in the woods, the thought of it was so exciting. Too bad you weren't going to go there. You're heading to school. The conversation of Tamarac's attempts to squeeze Chio for information, the snickers that escaped from Chio's continued while you headed towards your goal. Down the road some more, over the crosswalk, past the main streets, taking a turn at the corner. That was when the widest building you'd ever seen so far came into view. There have been tall ones, because that one had only been 2 floors, but there were a lot of these floors. North Acres Elementary School. The name made sense. You wonder exactly how many acres it was. Dozens of other kids were pouring out from different paths, mixing together on the front arches above the giant door. He tried to stand up straight, wanting to do things right. Then you went through the door together. Chio and Tamarac stayed even closer to you than the walk there. Inside was a long hall with different doors and staircases on the side. It was shiny and dull, like it had been cleaned so hard for so long it made everything even more worn down than normal. Poster boards with a bunch of message sheets tacked on line the walls. Tacked on line the walls. No one was even looking at them. The messages they had may never have been read. Welcome to the pumpkin party. I'm reading them. Happy fall, y'all. Fall into 1st grade. This is so real. This literally looks like my elementary school. They did it so well. Even the little paper leaves on the wall. It's so cute. Oh my god. The floors had a checkered tile pattern. Some of the kids made sure to only walk on one of the colors and avoid the other. It was loud. There was too much sound from the crowds for the hall to hold. It echoed around, which made it even louder. My high school was so loud. It was the loudest building I've ever been in my entire life. It was crazy. And the fact that we go there every day, that's got to be doing damage to our hearing. I swear to God, if you did the decibel thing or whatever, it would be blasting it over the roof. That was like a constant rock concert. There's too many kids at high school. This place was your school now. Chio tapped your shoulder and pointed with his other hand. You figured that was his way to say you had to keep going without having to yell so you could hear. Smart. The three of you pressed past the other students, making sure you didn't get separated. Step by step, you climbed upwards and forwards. Autumn waved a hand towards the right door where you reached the top. You arrived for the first day of classes right on time. A little bit of cold you brought inside the school on the tip of your nose and over your cheeks and finally drifted off your face. It was nice and warm when you went into the room. Also, this is so cute. Oh, it looks like my first grade class. It's adorable. Your brand new class, 5th grade, room 24, smelled like people hard at work, cut construction paper, crayons, and glue. Anything could be made with that. Oh. There were tons of leaves stuck to different colored balls, climbing around the windows, hanging from the shelves, sneaking out from behind boards where some of those things could be made. Kids sat together in close groups. The desks were pushed up to make bigger tables. There was just one chair by itself right in the middle, or the back if the way in was the front door. Tamara took a loud breath of waxy air. Wow, I thought it was going to be ugly. Oh, there's the 2 pages. This looks just like my old kindergarten class. Yeah! It was a good thing to Tamara, you guys. It wasn't to you. Autumn shrugged his backpack off into the floor. When it hit the ground, a puff of air came out of the not totally zipped top. Nothing in this place caught his eye in a good way or a bad way. It was like nothing around him existed. Chio just watched you and Tamarack look. He chuckled at the faces you both made. The classes looked the same for every room in every grade every year. Oh, it wasn't that he couldn't see what you did, that he had already seen it 100 or 10 times or more. Chio knew school well as he knew everything else in Golden Grove. He kicked his backpack behind him to be up against the wall, never glancing down. There was already a bunch of bags there, sat one by one along the far side of the room. They were almost completely hidden under a row of hooks that had coats and jackets and stuff clattered around them in stacked piles. There weren't enough holders for all the layers people brought. You're pretty lucky. This is your first time here, but you only have to do it once. We're going to graduate and go to a different school next year. We'll all be the new kids then. He talked while he put his arms out of the jacket you always see him wear so far. He tossed it on top of a rounded lump of other coats with a hook somewhere below it all. Tamarack waited, watched, and she tugged the end of her scarf to undo the knot it was all wrapped in. She talked too. I told you this place was weird and never changed. That made Chio shudder, and the sound was almost like the noise his backpack made a minute ago. School is different than the entire town, Tamarack. Tamarack didn't say any oh my god, I'm so sorry. Tamarack didn't say more words against that. She just got on her tiptoes to sling her untied scarf over Chio's jacket, building a mountain of stuff on the one little hook even higher. Chio stuffed his bandana deep into one of his pockets and lifted up his other shoulder. You're right that class is always the same. Seeing Autumn without his fluffy jacket felt like seeing a lion without its mane. He folded his arms high across his chest and gazed upon what you were starting to get was his kingdom. He had all the pride of a lion, even without the jacket. Though Chio acted like that was it for getting ready, he hadn't taken his gloves off. Was he going to wear those to class? Tamarack held tight with his fingerless gloves. Tamarack held tight to the strap of her bag. It for sure wasn't going with the rest of the pack. That means she was definitely done with the putting away your stuff part of getting ready for school. Tamarack's overalls were the most overclothing she had once the scarf was off. No coat or cool poncho or anything. The overalls were kind of short too. They didn't cover her whole legs. Her ankles had long socks and yellow rubber rain boots to keep them warm. You'd wonder if she didn't feel cold the same way most people did. We will take off all of our stuff. Or no, we'll take off just to start from, we'll keep the headbands, because the headband's cute. Not having your scarf made you feel different. You weren't coming or going anywhere anymore. You were staying there in that place for a lot of hours. But all you could do was find a hook pile to leave it behind on until later. Good morning and welcome, students. You glanced over your shoulder. In the open doorway was another new person for you to have to know. Hello. Her braids did match a few of the kids there, but she wasn't going to be sitting in the desk with them. She was twice as tall as everyone else in the room. That had to be the teacher, Mrs. Murray. Her soft brown eyes looked down over you and your neighbors while she tapped a finger against her freckle-speckled face. The pattern on her skin was almost like stars, if the sky was light at night and the stars were the darker part. Her rosy pink lips parted in a smile. She inclined her chin towards Chio. Nice to see you here, Mr. Chio Lin. This will be a good year. I love everyone knows that that's his little greeting. It's very cute. Yeah. Chio stretched the word out as far as it could go, and at the same time, he opened his arms wide. He turned his head away, too. He had the kind of tone your mom would when she had her old work friends over, and they asked her if they could set her up on a blind date. Squeakily cheerful, but not real. He was trying to be nice, but he wasn't trying that hard. Though, when his eyes rolled away, his gaze passed over you and got stuck there. A mischievous grin tugged at the corner of his mouth, and the sound of his voice went from off-key to chiming. Maybe. Mrs. Murray's pencil-pointy eyebrows lifted. She blinked one more time, and then her own smile grew. It was shared with you and Tamarack next. Hello, I'm your teacher, Mrs. Murray. Am I right to say you're Tamarack Bowman and Cassie Bylily? Yes, nice to meet you, Mrs. Murray. I'm Cassie. Tamarack bopped her hands in the air and twisted in place swing her bag so it hung behind her back. And I'm Tamarack. That is so great. Mrs. Murray smoked sweetly in a way that wasn't just nice, it wasn't surprised or relieved to find out the answer. You probably didn't need to ask to know who you were. Teachers knew a lot. If you'd be so kind, would you mind coming over to my desk over there in the far corner? I'd like to talk to you two before class begins. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Okay. Tamarack finally lowered her hands back down to her sides. She still bumped her bag around by pushing it up and down with her butt. It clattered loudly, and Mrs. Murray pretended not to hear. We will, we'll just say yes, teacher. Thank you, both of you. She gestured lightly with her hand for you to come over and left the doorway. Chiyo turned his head to follow the teacher. More and more of his dark hair eclipsed your view of the rest of him as she walked away. When you lost sight of his face, there had been a frown on it. After she was really gone, he swung back towards you and Tamarack, Autumn was smirking then. Good luck out there. He tipped over on one foot and bent his body way down. His other leg kicked in the air. He could balance better than a flamingo. Autumn slipped a hand in his jacket on the hook and also under Tamarack's scarf, which was still on top of it and dug around the fabric. He didn't come out empty-handed. He had gotten hold of his favorite notebook and pencil. Chiyo slowly lifted his chest up and brought his one hovering foot down to earth again. The whole thing was graceful. Oh, because he does ballet. Oh. He was followed by wildly waving the notebook goodbye at you. And paper fell out when he did it. Tamarack squealed, trying to talk but too fast, so none of it was real words. She reached her arms to Chiyo graspingly, like she'd pick him up and plant him back where he had dropped his thing. That didn't work either. He stepped away on light feet, carefree, and joined up with one of the groups at the desk. They all raised their hands and waved when he arrived. He was gone, and the teacher was waiting. Tamarack squinted her dark red eyes tightly. She directed her gaze towards you because it wasn't like anyone else in the room could understand her. You gave her a look back. Son of rain, he said with a grin. This is going to be a long, however long it is. We will pick up the paper and put it in our pocket without looking. He made a beeline to the tan page in the dark blue carpet and snatched it off the ground before someone else could step on or blow away or get lost in the middle of the forest. You simply tucked it away. That was taken care of. Tamarack pretended to be a jack-in-the-box like she did yesterday. This time it was by bending her knees before bouncing straight. Her fluffy locks of hair shook around her round cheeks. Come on, Cassie. She skipped off to the teacher's desk, all smiles. You caught up to her in no time and walked the rest of the way side by side. Off in the corner of the room was the teacher's old, dark brown desk. At the very top of the wood was dark. The inner part was a lot lighter. You could see from all the tiny cuts and scratches over the surface. It was far away from the desk as it could be. You guessed it was so she could have these kind of talks without everyone else hearing the whole thing. Mrs. Murray didn't sit in the cool rolling chair that went behind her desk. She stayed in front and only leaned her back against the top edge. She got to talk to you and Tamarack gently because she didn't have to push her voice across the piece of furniture that separated students and teachers. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. I wanted to let you know a little about today, what you can expect from your first day. Why? Well, this class is a unique arrangement of students, but you're the only two who have never attended the school before. Everyone else is simply returning after summer break. It's so hard being the new kid. It is not fun. I had to be the new kid in 3rd grade, and I mean, everyone was very nice and stuff, so I got lucky, but it's hard. It's hard being the new kid. I'd like to introduce you during roll call later. I want all the other kids to know who you are. Oh. Tamarack flicked at the buckles on her bag. They made a clinking sound when she hit them, and it's when she hit them up and a thump when they landed back down. Her gaze moved around too. This meeting wasn't exciting anymore. I think that you thought you were ready to school, but you weren't sure anymore. Why couldn't they come up with some other way to let people know who you were? Or they could just let you be a mystery. You're already getting a tummy ache and it was going to be worse when it really happened. The face you made wasn't what any teacher would have wanted when they told their students their plan for class. Mrs. Murray could only offer promises over her plans and no proof. I'll make sure it'll be alright. The kids will get it. The teacher slid her hands across the desktop behind her and spread her fingers out wide. In a couple minutes, I'll be telling the class to take their assigned seats. You'll have those spots for the rest of the year. I made a seating plan already, but there's a bit of wiggle room to help you get comfortable if you'd like. Tamarack's hand flew up from her bag to her cheeks. That sounded like a smack. Does this mean Cassie and me and Cassie got to sit together because we're neighbors and friends. Oh, her outfits made you want to cover your face with your hands too, for a very different reason. You were so nervous. Your heart wasn't going to start running around your chest until the teacher said if you could be with Tamarack the whole year or not. A twinkle was in Mrs. Murray's eye when she finally said what you were hoping for. You thought she might have paused on purpose to make it more dramatic. Yes, I can put you next to each other. Woo! It made Tamarack explode in celebration. She popped up on one foot, pulling the other up near her chest as her arms went in the air. Cassie, we're gonna sit together. Oh, yeah. We've got something then. Anything else? Um, let's say, can Tamarack and I sit with you? They were both your house neighbors. Tamarack and Chu had to be your seat neighbors too. Mrs. Murray was a really proper lady from what you've seen. She didn't have one wrinkle on her fancy suit, but creases suddenly appeared around her eyes and mouth after she heard that. The line spelled, not again. No, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're getting along with Chu, but there were students who wanted to sit next to him last year and didn't get to. It's their turn now. Your eyebrows went up so high you almost could have lost them. That many people wanted to sit by Chu? It was kind of rude to the teacher, but you had to turn your head right around to look at the guy you've been talking about. He was leaning over a bunch of desks from before and still talking to those other kids you didn't know. There was a big smile on every face. You tilted your head back to where it came, but not all the way. You only moved it enough to be able to look to the side at Tamarack. Her gaze was directed straight at you, too. She gripped the strap of her bag that was weighing against her chest. Since the day you moved in, it had just been the three of you in your cul-de-sac. Even if the day you moved in was yesterday, it was the same group. You, Tamarack, and Chu, neighbors. But you weren't in your neighborhood anymore. On the outside of that street, Tamarack exactly like you were, and Chu wasn't. You and her were strangers to Golden Grove now. You didn't know people, and they didn't know you. Chu had been there forever. It wasn't only that, you would learn something on you would already learned something on the first day of school. Chu was popular. I think that you were glad to have a friend like Tamarack even more. She could understand what it was like to be you. You were both the odd one out, but you were with each other. Not looking at her didn't stop the teacher from trying to talk to you. Cassie, I'm sure once you're in your seat, you'll get used to it. Soon you won't want to be anywhere else. And if not, you can come talk to me about it. Yes, Mrs. Murray. She didn't talk the desk up anymore. It was going to have to win you over on its own or not. So, Mrs. Murray had to wait for you and Tamarack to stop your shared stares of surprise, and then to point across the floor to a cobbled dress near the back that were side by side. Those yours, Tamarack close to the wall, and Cassie, yours is the one next to that. Window seat, gonna sit at the window seat. Tamarack happily sung herself a simple song about a brand new desk. On a break. Beside the roll call, there won't be any surprises. It'll be a regular, easy first day of class. Thank you for having a chat with me. You can take your seats. Tamarack's cheeks inflated. She pushed a smile between two balls of air. Okay, let's go, Cassie. All right. The teacher stayed resting up against her desk while you and Tamarack went towards your own seats. Tamarack sent a quick, excited glance from the desk and then back to you over and over as you walked towards them. She chattered about how it was going to be so fun being right next to each other and all the things you could do during the year. It was hard not to believe her. She beamed so horrible. She beamed so bright it was like her sparkly golden hair made the sunshine that filled the room. A clap and a call came from where you just left. Attention students, class is starting. Take your seats. Just like she said she would, Mrs. Murray was beginning the lesson. You're right in front of your assigned group of desks when she said it. The red plastic chair Mrs. Murray had pointed out was probably really old, but it was brand new to you. You pulled it out from the tables and gave sitting in a try. Hard, cold, and slippery smooth. And the back part wasn't straight. It bent away from the bottom seat part. It felt like leaning against the top of a shiny slide in the playground. If you weren't paying attention, you might fall right off. Maybe that was the point. It was a way to keep kids focused. Tamarack was right there on your left side, by the wall in the window just like she wanted. Past her, you could see the rustling treetops outside, with their golden fall leaves all bunched together. They kind of looked like Tamarack's puffy hair, but not as sparkly. She plopped her huge, jingling pack on the desk. The actual bag barely fit, and she had to bundle up the strap on top so it wasn't sneaking over to someone else's workspace. The tips of her rain boots were pressed against the dark blue carpet, and she tapped the heels together. It made the shoes squeak. Too excited for her own little place in the room. We had indoor shoes at my elementary school. We had outdoor shoes and indoor shoes, which we had to change into. And we weren't allowed to be in the wrong ones. Which, I mean, I think in America they don't have that concept. They just wear their like outdoor shoes indoors, which is horrifying to me. That's disgusting. Cassie, we're gonna be right here for the rest of the year. Yep, I've got the best seat neighbor. Yes, I do. Tamarack patted her hands against the thick fabric of the bag and giggled in time with the hits. She stayed pretty busy making a beat. You glanced out at the room ahead of you, where the most important boards in the teacher were. Chiu was there too, in the very front row of seats. It wasn't the same spot he'd been in before when you saw him talking to some people, but those other classmates he was sitting with were just as happy to have him there. He was hanging one of his arms across the top of a chair, which was settled in snugly. He looked like a heavy blanket that had been thrown onto it. He moved his head to the side to rest his cheek against his stretched-out shoulder. Chiu somehow made himself sit even more relaxedly. When that happened, he noticed you behind him. Autumn firmly pressed down his eyebrows and pushed his mouth open a little. He wasn't there when you learned that you and Tamara could be together, and he wouldn't be there now. Now he found out. He only looked that way long enough for him to notice you would notice his expression. Then your friend, house neighbor, and not seat neighbor lifted the corner of his mouth and sneakily waved a hand draped on the seat at you. Chiu's deep brown eyes darted over to Miss Murray, directing your attention to her. His eyes kept moving right into a dramatic roll that went all the way around. It wasn't hard to him imagine saying, "Teachers, huh?" or something like that. For a moment, you could picture what it'd be like if he had been right there next to you. But he couldn't face you forever. It was class time, and you were left staring at the tiny ponytail at the back of his head again. It was okay. You were close enough. Mrs. Murray patiently waited for people to get settled. Every seat had a kid in it, and final words were said before the room faded into short silence. That's when things changed from you being someone who was just in a room to a student who had to listen to a lesson. "Hello, class. Thank you for all being here today. Welcome to your first day of 5th grade." She gave a round of applause. Normally people sitting and watching were the one who clapped for the person standing up front, but you guess Mrs. Murray did things differently. "We're gonna have a lot of fun this year, and you'll learn a lot too. But also, you're the big kids on campus now, so I'm counting on you to set a good example for the rest of the students here, alright?" "Yes, Mrs. Murray." Around half the class answered her. Part was in a loud cheer, and others were bored grumbles. The teacher accepted both moods warmly. "Thank you. Let's start with roll call then. I wonder what step 3 is going to be like. Because I know they're 18, and I'll obviously bet Set and Fall, and I guess I don't know their ages. But it must be once they're already graduated high school, I would imagine. Because, I mean, I was 18 when I graduated high school. So yeah, I would imagine, so, you know, I think step 1 and step 2 will have a lot of school-based ideas and like moments and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see, like, in step 3 what some of the different like moments will be around. She crossed past the desk to get a folder off the little cubbies in the corner. Sorry. She got that and left her stiff brown jacket behind. The teacher flipped the folder open and she stepped back into the center spot. The cozy sweater made everything about her seem softer. Oh, it's a cute sweater. "You know the story. I'm going to shout out everyone's name in alphabetical order, first name first. When I call your name, raise your hand and say, 'Here, Mrs. Murray, I am so excited and happy to be at school with you today.'" That time, almost the whole class started to chatter. There were snickers shared between friends, whiny outcries of, "We can't do that," and someone even booed. "Okay, just here will work, and now I know you're listening." Her soft voice had a jovial kick. She had fun with her job. "Let's begin. Your first name started with K. It'd probably be a while before she called on you." You gulped. Would have been better to have it happen sooner or put it off even longer. Who knew? But not having to do it all would be best. I think we did it by last name. Always in my thingy at schools and stuff. And Mrs. Murray went through all the A kids and it just kept going from there. And then you were next. You knew not because she was on the first name letter, because her keen eyes were on you before she even said anything. "Cassie, bye, Lily?" Oh my god, that is very funny. I think Cassie's panicking a little bit right now. And they would just start rambling. "Hi, I'm Cassie. I just moved here with my mom in a new house," and you went on for that for like a minute. You stopped when Mrs. Murray gave the sign it was okay and you could be done. That's very funny. Hushed words spread across the cluster of other kids. Before you announced yourself, they had no idea you were a person who existed in the world. Now they did. The teacher gave her approval with a nod. It was over, at least for one day. She would probably do the roll call for every class the whole year. You didn't even want to think about that. The roll call rolled on after your turn. Chiolin? Mr. Chiolin didn't really raise a hand. He just popped a thumbs up from his laid-back lean. "Here, Mrs. Murray." That worked, though, and your teacher moved on. Tamarack Bauman? Tamarack's hand shot up in record time. It ought to be wound up and ready for that moment. "I'm Tamarack, that's me." It wasn't exactly what she was supposed to say, but Tamarack got an A for effort. Mrs. Murray continued with the last of her names. Once every person in a stiff red seat had a turn to say they were there, Mrs. Murray gave you and Tamarack a real introduction to class, the one she had warned you would be coming, and talked about how you just moved to town and what people were supposed to call you and everything. Mrs. Murray must have asked her mom and Tamarack's Omi and Opie to know all of that. You were glad you were glad when that embarrassing thing was over. That was the end of not really teaching us anything except names part of class. Mrs. Murray took a paper in a folder out of the flap and moved it over to the other side. Please take out pencils and notepads now. I'll be going over plans for the year and what will be expected of all my students. Your mom had packed a fresh notebook with perfectly smooth pages that didn't have a single smudge for you to use. You grabbed something to mark it up as you needed to. It was a pencil with a cute eraser on the end. We will hold it. Oh yeah, I think Cassie's ambidextrous. We'll hold it with our right hand. It was the one that felt right today. Tamarack leaned over her bag to be as close as possible. Her eyes were really squinted and set right on Mrs. Murray. She started clicking her shoes together again, even faster than before. If her legs beat any quicker, she might turn on one girl power motor and drive the desk around the room. Tamarack was definitely eager to get the information being told, but there wasn't a single piece of paper or pencil anywhere in her desk to take notes. Maybe she only had to listen to know. Over at the other group of tables, Chio's face was pressed right against his right fist that he had propped up against the desk. Sorry, water break. He was writing slow, lazy lines with the left hand in a plain spiral notebook. It wasn't his special one. That was your neighbors, and then there was you. I think that we will do her. This class was easy stuff, and he went along with it. Mrs. Murray talked about the subjects she'd be covering, upcoming holidays and activities, the way students would get graded, school rules, and even more. You weren't sure she'd ever stop having new things to tell everyone until she cut herself off. You said something about when parent-teacher conferences might happen and paused there. Chio, you stuck a glance away from the front to him. You couldn't help it. He totally lost that droopy pose. Instead, Autumn was hunched over a page. It was from a special notebook, and then he was scribbling in a hurry. Yeah? His answer was as breezy as ever. He didn't try to sound like a student being called out by a teacher. He was polite enough to pull himself up to look at the person speaking at him. Am I going too fast? Or is there anything else I can do differently? You've been very uncomfortable. Oh, the pencil dropped and clattered on the desk. Both of Chio's hands hovered over the piece of paper. He stared at it unsurely, as if he didn't know it was all suddenly too hot to touch or not. For a moment, Chio didn't know what to do. He blinked and then he started talking again, slowly, thoughtfully. No, it's all right. He leaned fully against his chair then and threaded his fingers together primly while placing them over the page. When he responded back, you could see the edge of an easy smile on his face. Even if you couldn't, you would be able to hear the smirk in his voice. I wasn't writing down what you were talking about. I'll get to that later. Don't worry over it. Eyes went wide as boldness, and a few kids were brave enough themselves to giggle at Chio's comeback. Mrs. Murray's usual smile was faint, but it was there. Well, let me know if you change your mind. I will, thanks. Such a little shit. She stopped a little break there and tapped her folder with the back of her hand to get the student's attention once more. Nothing but normal school stuff happened for the rest of the time. It was a lot like your old class and other places. Golden Grove didn't have a secret way of teaching kids that the rest of the country had never heard of. You figured it would be that way, but seeing regular lessons happen made it clear what you'd be dealing with. Like all the other classes you had before, this one was over eventually. But before the teacher let anyone get up, Mrs. Murray went all around the room to drop up piles of paper in different groups of desks. She explained how they were stacks of homework sheets and everyone had to take one packet with them and bring it back finished tomorrow. Then she said bye to the students and it was okay to leave. Yeah, I think teachers, she seems alright. Maybe you had to warm up to her. You'd have a whole school year to figure out how you felt about her. Right next to you, the spell that kept Tamarack totally locked onto Mrs. Murray during class broke. The teacher went over the desk and Tamarack turned to you. You stared at the pencil in your hands. Actually, it was the opposite. She was looking at the hand that was holding the pencil. I used my right hand too. We're the same again. I can use both hands. Tamarack used both of her own hands to slap the tabletop and stood up from her chair. She peered down at you over her desk, still sunk in your seat. This was the first time you ever had to look up to see Tamarack. She was so small you didn't think it ever would have happened. What? That's real? She bent her arms back and under like the legs of a closing folding chair, but stretched her neck out forward to past her before it passed her bag into your space. Tamara had gone from high up all the way down to tabletop level and was watching every twitch of your fingers. How do you do it? Put the pencil in your other hand. Here we go. Just watch. The pencil passed from your right hand to your left hand. You lifted it up to Tamarack's splitting ruby red eyes. That was what she wanted. Your stunt made her whisper in wonderment. Wow. As if that proved something. You hadn't even written something with it. Anyone could just hold a pencil in both hands. She might not even know that, because Tamarack didn't ask for anything more. Then Tamarack flopped back into her chair. I saw Chio losing his left hand. Really? A little puff of hair from the top of her head whipped around as Tamarack snapped her face back to front, but it was already too late. Chio had put his pencil down for the day. Oh well. Then Tamarack wasn't talking about hands anymore. That was finished, according to her. This time, it really was the pencil itself that had her attention. She poked it with her finger. I like your eraser. More, you can borrow sometimes. Thank you, but how would I use it? Oh yeah, she didn't write in class. Maybe you could take it with you to use for homework. Maybe. Tamarack started to hum and got to work unbuckling the two front straps of her bag. Hey, how come you didn't write stuff down in class? She simply kept tugging on the class to unhook them, carefree. I wouldn't read any of that. The buckles clipped open. She flipped the top flap over and in went the one in the homework packets. Closing it all the way back up followed right after. That was all she had to put away because she hadn't taken anything out of the bag for a whole class. She pulled the bag closer to her and wiggled herself under the strap. There was only one thing left before she was in the set. Tamarack bounced out of her chair and the heavy bag settled across her shoulder with a rattle. Come on, Cassie. She made a dash to the coat rack where her pink scarf was waiting. Before leaving, you remembered to take your homework packet and tucked it away in the inner pocket of your bag. Nothing else was forgotten either. You put all your things back where you had taken them from. You even brushed off the stray pencil shavings the eraser bit said had gone on your side thanks to the other kids at your table group. The desk was all nice and clean when you finished. But as soon as you got up to leave, you couldn't because someone called for you. Hey, Cass! You checked behind you, and there was Chio coming up from the front of the class. He was waving a piece of tan brown line paper in his hand. Hiya, Chio. It's good you're here. I've got stuff to say. Though, I guess I could have told you if you had gone. We live in the same neighborhood. It sounded like Chio was struggling to wrap his head around the idea that the two of you were strangers about a day ago, and now we're people who were going to be seeing each other all the time. There was a soft crinkle as Chio tapped the edge of his special paper against his right palm again and again. You stopped being able to hear it when Chio started to ramble, though he kept doing it. Okay, so, this paper. Here's what happened. I was talking to my mom and dad about it yesterday, back when it's still yesterday, and I realized something. He flapped both his arms out wide. Autumn was acting as blown away as he must have been when he first learned the thing he was trying to explain. Tamara found my paper and sending it to you wasn't just some unexpected, unexplainable thing that we were wondering about. It was sucky. I can get my words out, I promise. What? It was? Yes. Drama and emotion. He whipped his arms up and down in rapid gestures. He needed to tell you to feel what he needed you to feel what he was feeling, which turned out to be what he imagined you had been feeling before. You got a paper airplane with a message that had your name and everything. That's exciting. It had to mean something. And then it wasn't a message for you. It was an accident? Whoa, that's the biggest letdown I could even imagine. He had been flying the page around like it was another paper airplane, and he finally let it rest for a second when his arms dropped. All his bluster became only a sigh. If you're gonna get a note from me, it should have had something to say to you. That's what I thought of when I thought about it more. Oh, now I get it. That wasn't the end of the story, though. It was a prologue. Autumn sprung back into action and raised his left arm with the page pressed between his thumb and the rest of his outstretched fingers. And so, I've got something for you. Oh. He shook the paper in his hands, grinning cheekily. There was no way not to get what he meant and what it was supposed to be for you. You wrote me a note? Oh, Cassie's so cute. That's right. Autumn swished his paper once more to bring it down low enough for you to take. You eagerly seized the note from his hand. The page in your fingers was exactly what you remembered from the plain one, though somehow tougher and softer than regular paper and that same light brown color. But when you read the message, the words scribbled over it were all different than the first time. No. Welcome to the neighborhood. From Chiolin, this time actually. That was written in big clear letters. Stars and smiley faces crowded out any plain spots the words hadn't covered. That's what he was working on. That's so cute. It was careful work. From the extra line on the two was a fancy curve, and he didn't even draw the stars from corner to corner. There weren't any lines through the middle of them. The difference between the note you wanted someone to see and the one you got by accident was huge. Some blurry thing came up on up past the top edge of the paper. You blinked distracted and squinted over the page to figure out what was going on in the room. It was Chew, high on his tiptoes. He was watching you read the note, smirking, his hands tucked behind his back, and all around very pleased with himself. It's pretty good, huh? This is a masterpiece. The drawings are so good. Chew was already standing as tall as he could, but what you said made him grow even bigger. His chest puffed up. The lopsided smile filled up proudly. You've got an eye for art, Cassie. You gave one more glance at the message Chew had written for you. It was still there, welcoming you to the new neighborhood every time you saw it. When you looked at Chew himself, he had finally dropped his feet and hands back to where they normally were. He was waiting there to see if you were going to do anything else. Chew, were you okay before when the teacher picked on you? You're the one who's worrying about me when this is your first day in a new school in a new town with all new people? You're really a nice kid. Oh. That's right. I'm Mrs. Nice Person. Oh, yeah, that's your real name. He started when a new thought tickled his brain. I told you Mrs. Murray was a tough one for me. He tilted his head. It made some strands of dark brown hair slip in front of his face. Autumn grinned, though, that reassuringly, encouragingly, wanting you to smile along with him with how silly he obviously thought it was. But you didn't. There wasn't anything he could even pretend was fun in your face. It looked as hard and flat as tiles on the school's first floor. This was serious. Without thinking, Chio brushed at the outer place hair behind his ears. It was a smooth move. The way he talked to you was also got more mellow. Look, that was nothing. I'm a fast writer. I can do my own stuff and get school stuff. She's just giving me all the attention because I'm the favorite. Straining back out, Chio shrugged his arms in a widely, what can you do kind of way. He just wasn't going to care about it. Okay, I get it. Good. Even though Chio was the last one talking, he abruptly sliced a hand through the air to get what was the conversation out of the way and have it be about something else. But wait, before I forget, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed, Cassie. The first day's gotta be the hardest one you knew, and he didn't even break a sweat in class. His hands were on his hips in a commanding pose. He talked energetically. Nothing was held back. You didn't feel smaller next to his bright presence. You don't think that's what he was trying to do. Chu was starting to get to know you better, and it was making him look differently at you. You can handle it. I think I did my best. Your best is the best. Oh, that's so fucking cute. Tyson snickered. While thinking some kind of thought, he stretched and curled his fingers to feel out the way his gloves were fitting. Chiu pinched the edges, pinch at the edges, straighten them out better. Anyway, you and Tamarack in the back next to each other, huh? Mrs. Murray is smart. Sometimes just too smart for me. The teacher said a bunch of people wanted to sit by you. Yeah, we already got the package. It's notifying me. We received the package. With a huge smile, Chiu swung his arms wide open. Yeah, of course they did. He acted like it was obvious, and it kind of was. You already knew. He was popular. The paper crinkled in hand. You've been gripping it the whole time. You twisted away to pull the zip on your bag. The welcome message from you got from Chiu went right next to the package of homework Mrs. Murray had given you. Chiu giving you a paper reminded you that you had one to give to him too. You gave him the paper he dropped before class. Your bag was already open from putting away the newest paper, so you just stuck your hand into it again. The backpack couldn't be unzipped all the way or everything would fall out. He only made a hole big enough for you reaching around inside. Luckily, the paper from Chio's special notebook wasn't anything like the homework from Mrs. Murray. You didn't have to look to know it, you could just tell by touching. But you did have to worry about mixing up the page that was yours to keep and the one that wasn't. You had to stick your face against the cold, bumpy zipper track to read which cottony page you had before you to make sure you got it right. Then you looked at Chio again. You dropped this. That's what you said when you held out the paper to him. It worked like a ticket to a time machine because you saw the exact same thing you did yesterday, with Chio gasping, flailing his hands, and all of that. You know, both of his hands smacking in his cheek, pressing it back, while his head, shoulders, and eyes jutted out in total shock. You've got another one? He scratched himself so much that the question could only come out as a bashful peep. That's the paper from yesterday, right? The one Tamarack found? You glanced at the paper for a second, then back at Chu. The side with the words was the one you had. He could read at least some of the message, even if it was a little bent in your hand. But you guessed it was still a shot, and Chu didn't want to miss the tiny chance he hadn't been caught losing another piece of the notebook. That is exactly what happened, though. No, it's a different one. Yeah, looks like it. Then his stiffness melted away, and Chu stood evenly with his head high again. A grin grew too, same as a flower after winter. You know, Cass, your sorcery amazes me. You and him broke into laughter together. Chiu losing his paper over and over definitely was not the work of a sorcerer, but it was a lot more fun for both of you that way. Told you I was magic. Chiu slipped his left palm up towards you, kind of like how somebody might ask for a dance in a movie. He had fancy moves like that a lot. He placed the page right there, like the paper was giving him a low five. Chiu crossed his right arm over to reach into the left pocket of his pants. Out came a well-worn notebook with the pages that barely stayed stuck inside. He flipped it open with his thumb and positioned the missing paper squarely on top of the set. He ran his now empty fingers over the tattered side of the notebook, pressing the corners and edges that might have been sticking out, mostly back into straight lines. Then Autumn flicked his wrist to close the notebook, dropped it back into his pocket, and patted the sides of his pants fondly. That's that. You did it. The page made it back home. Chiu didn't have anything else to say then. You could tell since he wasn't looking at you anymore. His gaze was on the move. He already seen everything there was to see in class that looked like all the other classes. At least you thought so. But he decided to find something that needed his attention, in his mind anyway. Oh, she hasn't left either. Wait, right here. I have another thing to do. After cupping his hand over his mouth, Chiu called past you all the way out to the side of the room. Hey, Tamara, get over here. You gotta see this. What is it? What is it? You have to look. Tamara bounded across the room faster than any Olympic athlete, probably. It would have been close because she was really speedy. She did a skipping leap from the last foot before reaching you and Chiu and tossed her arms straight in the sky as she straight up as she stuck the landing. The fringe strands of her pink scarf, which she had securely wrapped around her neck, had flown up and almost tingled your nose. I'm here. Good, check it out. Chiu waved urgently for her to come closer with one hand and reached into his right pocket with the other. That was inside he kept the notebook in. He was going for something else. The two leaned in, having a one-on-one huddle. You weren't a part of it, but you could tell what he had by the little glimpse you could catch over his hunched shoulders and the sound of it. It was rustle and crinkly, not in a sharp way like leaves, but in a soft, squishy way. She was holding a wadded-up bag, probably from whatever grocery store Golden Grove had. He kept the bag tightly closed, gripping two sides of the top, keeping his fists pressed together. Then he suspiciously looked side to side. No one else would be allowed to see the treasures hidden inside. Tamara did too after him, either double check or to not be left out, or maybe because she didn't want to miss what he might be spotting. All right, this is it. Suspense pulled in your two neighbors. Tamara bit the nail of her thumb and totally stopped breathing. There was nothing in the world for them except the bag and whatever it held. And finally, before Tamara could fall over from no air, Chiu parted his hands and stretched open his unusual gift wrapping. Mouth open, eyes wide, Tamara gawked down at the bag. You figure she'd just go, wow, or something, but she scanned whatever it was up and down with the same eager expression. It was possible she was so blown away her face had gotten stuck like that. It turned out to not be true because she eventually saw enough of the reaction to slowly begin rumbling inside. At first, it was the edges of her lips wobbling, then her eyelashes trembling, and finally her brows pinching fiercely. Tamara snapped her head up and glared straight into Chiu's awaiting smirk. That's trash! What's in that bag? A tiny bubble of snicker popped out from Chiu's mouth. There was another even louder one. The laughs kept bursting bigger and bigger until he was shaking so bad that whatever was in the bag almost bounced out. It's trash! Yes, it is. I said so. Being heard over Chiu's giggling fit could have been a problem, but Tamarack was entirely okay with shouting. Mrs. Murray looked over from the commotion from her fancy teacher's desk. She still had the folder with the roll call paper and class schedule open. Maybe there were no rules once class was out, or maybe this kind of thing was normal with her students because she didn't tell any of you to quiet down. She just went back to her job stuff. By the time you focused on your neighbors again, Chiu had started to calm down. Autumn shook his head and wiped a tear from the corner of his eye, and then thorough, heavy breaths gave away a wisecracking answer. I didn't say this was something you want to have, just that you should see it. Why would I want to see your trash? She asked him crossly while crossing her arms to get over it. Oh my god. Oh dear. Chiu gathered the handles into one hand and swung the arm up near his chest so the bag hung over his shoulder. The post would have fit best for someone modeling a purse 5 times more expensive than any your ma owned, and she had really nice ones for work, not a plastic bag full of garbage. I have reasons. I've always got reasons. What are they? The question was cautious, aware of any other tricks. Chiu might pull, but the curiosity was clear in her voice. Being presented with a bag of garbage was okay as long as it had some kind of secret. Well, he paused to rearrange his face into something more serious and nodded thoughtfully. Even though me losing that paper was an unexplainable mystery, I was thinking about how you just got to town and were already having to pick up after people to keep the forest clean. That's not fair. Still speaking as a wise mentor, Chi used his other hand to gesturingly tell at the windows. So I decided to go back outside yesterday and check the forest for litter. This is all the stuff I got so far. He really did have his reasons, and it was exactly like he had done with you in the note. Chiu imagined what Tamarack had probably thought or felt from what happened yesterday, and when it seemed like it could be sad, he did something about it. That's so fucking sad. A tamarack sucked in a gasp of air and let it out as a squeal. Really? You cleaned the woods? I did. All of this went from being on the ground into my trash bag. Wow, that's so nice. She did. She did wow about it after all. She also kicked her feet out one after another in a happy little dance. Her bag jostled around with her moves like a partner. It was your good idea first. That could have been humble, but he cocked his chin and grinned, so pleased with himself that it really wasn't anymore. Tamarack was too giddy to care or notice. Thanks to you. There we go. We will do. She was so nice to you, but also to everyone all the time. It made you feel a little bit bad. You would secretly. Oh no, that's it. Was like, oh, we're not special. Um, that was funny and helpful. Good job. You're welcome. The little trio of you, Tamarack and Chew, stayed together, reunited by the desk, but the room became more and more empty of anybody else. After a while, besides you three, there was only the teacher left in class. It was empty enough and quiet enough that you could hear the doorknob twist and click. That was all that happened, though. You'd figure someone would come in. I think we're actually gonna leave it there and our mysterious new visitors for next time. But we accomplished our first day of class. Very cute and fun. Thank you so much for joining me on this little adventure. This is definitely gonna be several parts. I've wildly underestimated how long this demo is. But yes, their Kickstarter is still on. We're still going for the stretch goals and stuff. Please go check them out. Our Life Now and Forever. So sweet, so wonderful. Please play the demo for yourself. There's so many different ways to experience it. And the character creator is so fun. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me and have a lovely day. All right, goodbye.